So there was three questions here. And this was from my video, which was titled, Why I Sold My Rental House for Bitcoin. So these were a few comments under there, and I think that they're actually very valid comments, questions. So we're going to talk about them. The first comment here was from Kosher Tourist. And his question was, can you rent out your Bitcoin? That's number one. Can you rent out your Bitcoin? Second question here was comparing land to the most vital piece of the world. Comparing land in the most vital piece of the world to a currency? Question mark. From Sal. And that was in reference to Manhattan. I said that we watched that KSI, I think he's a rapper or an influencer or something. He was talking about owning land in Manhattan. And I said, he gets it, but he doesn't understand the fact that you don't sell that piece of land in Manhattan in 10 years. You hold on to that forever, for your life, for your kids' life, for their kids' life, generations. But Sal said, comparing land in the most vital piece of the world to a currency. And then the next one here is from Daniel Acosta. Great name. The question is, I love Bitcoin, but what about the cash flow? If you never sell, you'll always have to work. Fair questions, all three of those. Can you rent out your Bitcoin? Why are you comparing it to the most vital? Why are you comparing a currency to the most vital piece of land in the world? And what about the cash flow? So let's talk about this. I did a little spreadsheet for everybody. And we got a new face in the Zap.stream, Win V. Good morning. Hello out there. So let's talk about this. This is the answer I have applies to all three of these. And this is a very valid question. And a lot of people, I think, are having a hard time understanding this concept because Bitcoin doesn't have cash flow. You can't rent out your Bitcoin. But here's what happens with it. So over time, this is what I want you to think about. Because this is going to be very applicable to you one day. If you hold Bitcoin right now, this is going to be very applicable to you. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your Bitcoin stack. You're going to look at your 100% of your Bitcoin. Let's say that you have one Bitcoin. You take 90% of that stack. That's the stack that you never, ever sell. That's your land in Manhattan. You keep that. You protect that with everything that you have. You pass that on to your kids. You pass that on. They pass that on to their kids. And you have that Bitcoin, the 90% of your Bitcoin stack, in your family forever. With that, you also have another 10%. And I want you to think of that 5 or 10% as essentially your retirement fund. You're going to be spending that Bitcoin over time. So what's the point of rent? What's the point of cash flow? You want more purchasing power, right? That's the whole point of collecting rent, so you can have more money to spend, and cash flow, so you can have more money to spend. So with Bitcoin, and what I'm going to show you here on this spreadsheet is I want you to think about that 5% that you're going to spend, even though the Bitcoin balance will go down as you spend it, because it's a scarce asset with a fixed supply. As time goes on, even though your balance is going down, your Bitcoin balance is going down, your purchasing power is going up. Because it's a scarce asset with a fixed supply, even though your Bitcoin balance will go down, your purchasing power will go up over time. So it's easy to say that, it's easy to hear it, but let's actually look at this in practice and what this looks like. So everybody loves the spreadsheets. I know there's some spreadsheet fans in the house in this chat. Let's look at this. Very simple. I wanted to keep things as simple as possible for people to really understand what the hell I'm talking about here. So this is what I got. And I was going to do this into the future, but I thought it made a lot more sense to actually look at what has happened historically. So let's take a look at this. And I used 100 Bitcoin there because I think that in 10 years from now, owning one Bitcoin will be essentially the equivalent to that. That's how Bitcoin works, right? 10 years ago, you could have went onto a website, you could have went onto Bitcoin Faucet, and just for entering in your Bitcoin address, they would have sent you 5 Bitcoin. Today, if you turn on a podcast, you can listen to the podcast. They'll pay you sats for that. So we went from Bitcoin to sats in about 10 years there. And in 10 years from now, we're just going to continue on that trend. As more and more people adopt Bitcoin, that's what will happen with it. So this is from 2020. Let's say that you had 100 Bitcoin in your wallet. The value of that in dollar terms would have been $726,000 in 2020, based on a price of $7,267 per Bitcoin, which is what we talked about at the start of the show right here. So you had 100 Bitcoin that was worth $726,000. So you decide that you want to spend some. You're actually going to use that as your cash flow, your sats flow. So you decide in 2021 that you're going to spend 5 Bitcoin. So the price at that time increased from 7,200 to 60,000, but I use 50,000 here just to be a little bit more conservative. So those 5 Bitcoin would have purchased you $250,000 worth of stuff, whatever it is. So you sold 5 Bitcoin, 2021. 2022 rolls around, you sell another 5 Bitcoin. The price went down a little in 2022. I used 25,000 as my average there. So you got $125,000 worth of purchasing power from that. 2023 rolls around. You want to spend a little bit more Bitcoin. Now the price it went up slightly. I used 30,000 bucks as an average here for 2023. It was a little bit higher than that, but I used 30,000. So you spent 5 Bitcoin, you got 150,000 worth of purchasing power in 2023. So at the end of that, 2024, you have 85 Bitcoin now, but you have $5.1 million now worth of purchasing power. So even though your Bitcoin balance went down to 85 Bitcoin because you spent some of it, your purchasing power actually went up from 720,000 to $5.1 million in 4 years. So that's the difference here between an asset like real estate, which is totally inflated, all debt-based, based on the fiat money. Everything goes up over time, but you lose your purchasing power with that. So even though you're bringing in money every month, you got cash flows coming in, you're charging rent, your fiat dollar is losing power instead of gaining power like Bitcoin. So that was a real eye-opener for me because I had this thought in my head for a long time of that made sense to me. You have this Bitcoin, you take a part of it, you keep that as your long-term Manhattan fund. Pretty much you never sell that, but then you also plan on spending some Bitcoin over time. And it kind of made sense in my head, but until I actually put it on a spreadsheet based on actual historical data that has happened, I didn't understand how powerful that was. So that was pretty cool. I hope that people can understand that now after actually seeing it based on what has happened, not versus just some hypothetical. Pretty interesting. So I'll probably clip this because I think that, the housing prices going up in fiat, but down in Bitcoin, that graphic and video really resonated with a lot of people. And I think that after seeing this in Bitcoin and how you can actually use Bitcoin, not to get cash flow, but to actually retain and increase your purchasing power over time, it's a totally different dynamic and mindset shift that nobody is ready for yet. I shouldn't say nobody. There's probably some people in this chat who really understand that, but I feel like that even the people who own Bitcoin is about 1%, and the people who really understand what's happening here is about 0.001% of the world, if that. So with that, be glad that you're here. I got one